Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today, we're going to take a look at what for most people will be a relatively new initiative in Iowa that brings new innovations in substance abuse prevention to your community in a unique partnership with Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. Joining us today to talk about this initiative is Lisa Shanker, a scientist from the Partnerships in Prevention Science Institute at Iowa State University. Lisa, welcome to the show. Your title and the organization is a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
Give us an idea of exactly what some of the goals are and what you're working on here in Iowa.
Well, what we do is form unique partnerships between schools, public schools, local county extension offices, and then other community stakeholders that care about families and youth and care about the issue of substance use and preventing other behavioral health issues in their communities.
Now, for Iowans, this is a big deal because we have 99 counties, and we've had a lot of guests here to talk about what they do in prevention and a lot of parents affected by these problems. There is nowhere near enough prevention resources to cover 99 counties. What makes what you're doing unique?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is, of course, we're tied to Iowa State University and the Extension and Outreach at the state level. So we have partnerships at many different levels within Extension. They help us to be able to do that outreach across all 99 counties potentially. What we need to do is build our capacity and help communities understand what resources Extension can bring to the table to create these unique partnerships.
Now, a good question might be, what are some of those resources? We know in Iowa there are statistics that show a spike in the number of babies being born in rural hospitals with opiates in their system. We know that there are precious little resources and not enough prevention agencies to go around. For a person living in these communities watching this show, what would be some of the services you might be bringing to the table?
Well, what Prosper does is provides universal evidence-based prevention programs. And what that means is these are programs that have already been shown to work through research. So we know that people, when communities implement these programs, they're going to get a big bang for their buck. The kinds of programs that they teach basic skills, like how to resist peer pressure. So some of those are about assertiveness. How do I handle a situation where a friend might offer a teen something that they shouldn't be using? How do I address that in a way that doesn't make me look uncool? So that's one of the things that these programs teach. They also teach a lot about the family environment and how parents can make a big difference in the lives of their teens. The teenage years are a time when kids are exploring, they're trying new things, and so we know that it's a time when parents have to maintain that relationship with them. So what we're trying to do is provide opportunities for schools to teach the kids, the students that they serve, the skills that they need to be successful and avoid getting into problem behaviors like substance use, and also in the home environment helping parents understand what they can do as well.
Now, this sounds like it's great, almost too good to be true. How is this actually going to get into the schools? I mean, is this something that there's a plan for? Is it something that would help if people try and reach out and look for help from you?
So what we do, a lot of times people implement, any school can implement a prevention curriculum in their school. So, there are a lot of programs out there that are available. What we do is provide a support system that helps schools to make sure that they're implementing these, and communities implement these programs for beyond if they get a grant, for example. We want to help them sustain their program so that even after their funding ends, they're able to keep doing it. So one of the things that we do is create these partnerships where the school and the community and extension are able to work together to bring in those resources and volunteer time, for example, that helps these programs continue in their communities, in their schools.
Now, I talk about this as being relatively new, and the new part might be getting into what's traditionally been an ag extension office, but it's been around for a while, this program.
Yeah, actually, so Prosper started with a research project, and it started back in 2001 with funding from the National Institutes of Health. And as the research project moved on and the findings were positive and significant, showing that there were practical implications for getting these programs out in the community and having them delivered to these parents and students. More communities and more states even became interested in being able to offer this system in their communities. And so what we've done is developed our capacity at our institute to help support those communities and additional states that are interested in bringing this to their communities.
Well, I'd like to have you talk after the break about some of the communities you've been in and the successes we can talk about there. When we return, we'll talk with Lisa about some of the challenges faced when science meets the community. You don't want to miss this.
Many teenagers don't understand the dangers and effects of marijuana use. Now it's time for Just the Facts, ma'am. An IQ is a score determined from standardized tests to determine intelligence. An IQ of 100 puts the average person in the 50th percentile of intelligence. Regular marijuana use during teenage years can cause a long-term 8-point drop in IQ. A loss of 8 IQ points drops them to the 29th percentile. For more information, go to drugfreeiowa.org.
My dad thinks he can fix anything, but at least once a day, we catch him doing that with our modem. Like things would magically be faster if he could just get it high enough. He doesn't get that it's our phony internet. Looks like I'm gonna have to fix this one. Siri, get me faster internet.
Okay, calling Mediacom now.
Drop the phony internet and get a real deal. Add Mediacom Internet 60 for just $14.99 a month for a year. Call today.
Watching your sister go through withdrawal is the last thing you expect to do. You hope she gets past it, but worry she'll relapse. The story of addiction is all too familiar, but you can change it.
That's 2 out of 3.
If you or someone you know is in recovery from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org, because your story can change someone else's.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking about a new system in Iowa, Prosper, that's helping people with drug problems, especially the opioid epidemic. Joining us is Lisa, a scientist from Iowa State University. Lisa, welcome back. You know, we talk about all these things coming to Iowa, but there's places where you've actually been doing the job. Tell us where you are and what some of the successes have been in those communities.
Yeah, so we're actually implementing the Prosper model in 5 communities in Iowa currently. So we're up in Lyon County and Sioux County up in northwest Iowa. We're working with Webster County, specifically Fort Dodge, and then Hamilton County, Webster City, and then down in Monroe County in Albia. And so those 5 communities have created these partnerships with the schools and extension to deliver their family and school prevention programming. And what we've seen is that they're able to reach these students and reach these families to give them this great prevention that has been shown to work from our research. And so now we've basically taken the university's mission, which is science with practice. So we're actually getting it out into communities, and we're helping them to ensure that these programs are delivered so that they create the most benefit for those families and students, and that they keep delivering them over time so that we don't see that drop-off that a lot of times happens when funding runs out.
Are you targeting a particular age group of children or grades?
Good question. So we focus on middle school age kids. And specifically, we do our family program when they're in 6th grade, because a lot of times that's the transition. In most communities, that's a transition from elementary to middle school. And we feel like that's a critical time when they're exposed to new, a lot of new friends and new people if they're moving from an elementary to a middle school. So we want to make sure that we're keeping that family relationship and the parent-child relationship strong, keeping the communication open, making sure that parents understand how to do that monitoring and asking those good questions so that they know where their children are, so that they're able to give them the freedom that they need to grow and become independent, but also keeping them safe and out of trouble.
We know from things like the Iowa Youth Survey and the Monitoring the Future surveys that between 6th and 11th grade, there's a dramatic change in the attitudes and the behaviors of children. So it's really important to catch them at a young age. You know, we hear from educators that's very, very hard to engage parents in anything happening in the schools. How is the Prosper system any better at that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So this is really where the partnership with Extension shines, because Extension, that's what they do. They do outreach to parents and families and youth, through 4-H and through their human sciences programming. And so, a lot of people might not realize all that Extension offers. They think about Extension as ag or livestock or working with farmers, and so Extension is so much more than that. And so they offer family programs, parenting programs, and so that's where this unique partnership comes into play, because Extension really has those same goals as with strengthening families and with building skills in positive youth development. And so that's where prevention and Extension really meet, and that's why we feel like they have Extension has great ways of engaging families, because people trust Extension in their communities. They look to them as a reputable source of information that's coming from the university. And so because of that reputation, we found that families are more likely to engage with these partnerships that are created and the programs that are being offered.
Yeah, there's great confidence in the Extension office through Iowa State, and of course a long-standing relationship with farm families and communities. And a lot of rural communities in Iowa are exactly that, agricultural communities. So I think that sounds really cool. Now, we have 5 counties you're in now. How is this going to get out to the other 94 counties? It's been around for a while, and it's ramping up. Is there something new happening that's really going to take this on a wider scale and out so more people can get in contact with it?
Yes, so we actually have, I just received funding from from SAMHSA, which is a federal agency that focuses on substance abuse and mental health. And they have recognized that Extension really has an important role to play in communities, in rural communities across the U.S. And so they gave out some funding, and we were lucky enough to get one of those grants. And through that, I will be able to work with more counties who can create new partnerships. So I'm looking to find new Extension offices that want to partner with schools and partner with behavioral health agencies to find out what they're doing and how they can start getting involved. So it's really a unique opportunity through this project for those folks that are out there doing prevention work and for schools to have a new partner at the table that has that reputation and that expertise in reaching families and parents and youth, to have them at the table to start talking about prevention activities.
Now, specifically when we're talking about this opioid crisis, we know that it's a deeply embedded crisis in rural communities where they have the least amount of resources. Is that part of this initiative to make sure we can reach out? Because it's sort of scary when you think about the people in rural communities facing the same problems as they face everywhere else, but there's nobody to help them.
Exactly. So that's really what this is designed to do, is in those counties, especially where they don't have those prevention resources available, we want something to be there for these families and students. And so that's where we really want to help Extension understand the important role that they can play, especially in places where they don't have those resources.
We'll take a short break and continue with the story of what you're doing in Iowa to help communities deal with substance abuse. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at how this new and unique system, Prosper, can help people throughout Iowa, especially rural communities struggling with the opioid crisis. You don't want to miss this.
You wouldn't walk through the halls of your school naked. Yet without thinking, many teens sext explicit photos of themselves to friends using cell phones, never thinking it'll go further. But once you hit send, you're exposed. You're out there in cyberspace for everyone to see. Sexting, it's dumb, it's dangerous, and it's against the law.
My mom thinks hashtags are something you eat with eggs. She legit has a meltdown every time her phone updates. Last week, she asked me to explain chat snap. So of course, she chose the absolute wrong internet provider, and now we have the slowest internet ever.
Escape Planet Slow and get a real deal. Add Mediacom Internet 60 for just $14.99 a month for a year. Call today.
After Kylie used coke, she stopped caring about school, friends, or who she had to steal from to get more of it. The story of addiction is all too familiar, but you can change it.
Sleeping in, Dad?
If you or someone you know is in recovery from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org, because your story can change someone else's.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking with Lisa about substance abuse prevention, something important to all Iowans, and potentially through partnership with ISU Extension and Outreach, helping people in every corner of Iowa. Lisa, you're doing a big job on opioids, and I've heard some of the press in some of the counties that you're in now. Tell us about what you're doing with the RX program.
Yeah, so the Prosper RX project was funded by the USDA, and that, again, they recognize the importance of extension in helping with the opioid crisis specifically. And so what we're trying to do through that project is have 3 of our communities that are implementing the Prosper model do some specific activities related to opioid misuse prevention. So that might be reaching out to pharmacists, healthcare providers, as well as law enforcement. So getting involved more with take-back events and getting the word out about how to get rid of dispose of unused opioids the right way, where to drop them off. So they're doing a lot of that kind of awareness building in their communities, and just really helping to help schools as well understand how to tell their students about the dangers of prescription misuse, and helping them understand that there's a right way and a wrong way, not to use the prescriptions of others. And so we're really excited about what our communities are doing to help deal with the opioid issue.
Now, sometimes, especially we talk words like science and education, for people struggling with some of these problems, it's again outside of their real reach. They want to know, what can you do for me? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember, I ran into a group of people doing Prosper RX where they were actually putting together volunteers that were grandparents, that were working with other grandparents to help work with their grandkids to become more aware of these risks? Is it that kind of a program where there's flexibility to do these different things?
Well, so at the basis of Prosper is going to be those evidence-based programs. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be that family program and that school program that we know work. What we're doing is adding on some specific components that focus on opioids and awareness building and the safety issues and takebacks, and getting more community partners involved specifically around that issue. So as you know, Peter, one of the big issues right now is opioids, and we're hearing about it in the news all the time, and the issues with overdose deaths and how that's increasing. And so one of the ways that we're engaging with more communities and schools is by helping them see that when you are addressing opioid misuse and dealing with opioids and prescription safety, you're going to be addressing all other substances as well at the same time. So that's one of the ways that, even though there's funding out there and there's interest in addressing opioids, but we know that doing those core programs in addition to these additional activities that communities may be doing, we're getting even more bang for our buck, and even more prevention work going in the communities.
Now, as a person that obviously cares about these issues, what do you think are some of the challenges that we face going into a community to try and have these resources really utilized?
I think a big part of it is just helping people understand that they don't have to do everything. The message that I like to get out is that everyone can do something, even if it's a really small thing. So even if it's just sharing information, giving out brochures, it's these small things will all add up. And when we all, you get a community involved and they're all sort of part of the effort doing a small part, it can really create a big impact.
Do you think that the culture of a primarily ag extension and outreach organization is going to embrace this idea comfortably, or are there some challenges that you face? Are there going to be community level sort of energies that need to put some pressure on those offices to say, hey, we need you to expand into our community with this program?
Well, we would love for schools and other community groups and agencies to go to their extension office and tell them that, hey, we would love for you guys to be part of our partnerships that we already have going on. So we would love for that to happen and for those connections to be made. So I know, Extension is one of the things that they're so good about is those partnerships and making those connections. And when other community groups can tap into those networks that they have and their expertise in reaching families and youth in rural communities, I think that that's a partnership it's a winning combination.
Well, it's great to hear so much passion about this issue. And we come back from the break. I'd like to know a little more about you as a scientist, what led you to this path, and some of the things you think are really important to this program being successful. After a short break, we'll invite Lisa to share some good advice and tips on how to reach out to ISU Extension and what you should be thinking about in your community. You don't want to miss this. See you after the break. Right through there.
You have to help her! Help her!
Hey, Sam, can you hear me? Looks like an overdose. Do you know what she was taking?
She doesn't do drugs. Her friends don't do drugs.
No, listen, we're just trying to save your daughter's life. Any idea? Hey, listen.
Going to the movies, hon. See you later.
Bye, Sam. Sam, wake up!
Sharing. I mean, I don't mind it when there's enough to go around. Toys with Charlie? Okay. My mint ice cream? Fine. Our slow internet with my whole family at the same time? That's pushing a man too far.
Get unlinked and get a real deal. Add Mediacom Internet 60 for just $14.99 a month for a year. Call today.
I thought texting friends on her cell phone was harmless.
But there she is, our daughter, topless for everyone to see.
I'm so embarrassed for her. I can't even imagine what she must be feeling. How did this happen?
What was she thinking?
Someone sent our teenage son a photo of a naked classmate. If he forwards it, it's a crime.
Our son committing a crime? I had no idea.
And he could be labeled a sex offender.
Tell your teen, sexting is a crime.
My dad thinks he can fix anything. But at least once a day, we catch him doing that with our modem. Like things would magically be faster if he could just get it high enough. He doesn't get that it's our phony internet. Looks like I'm gonna have to fix this one. Siri, get me faster internet.
Okay, calling Mediacom now.
Drop the phony internet and get a real deal. Add Mediacom Internet 60 for just $14.99 a month for a year. Call today.
Thank you for returning to Surviving Bad and joining us in what's my favorite part of the show, where we get to know a little bit more about our guest and some of your ideas about what people should do. Lisa, you're obviously very passionate. What brought you to this place as a scientist in Iowa working on these programs?
So, when I was in high school, I was sort of a little peculiar in that I wasn't one who wanted to experiment with substances. And one of the things that I wondered was, what was it that drove kids my age to want to do those things? And so from a pretty early age, it was something that I didn't understand, I was curious about. And so when I decided to go to graduate school and focus on that issue. And so, and then I actually worked at a treatment center for about a year in inner city St. Louis, and really got to see what addiction looks like. And it just broke my heart to see, mothers losing their kids because they were dealing with addiction. People that were it was a revolving door of coming in and out of this treatment center. And so it struck me right then and there that I really have to get into prevention, because I need to get to them before they get to this point where, this has affected them so, just to the extent that they're just physiologically now addicted. And so that's really what drove me to prevention.
Sometimes when we look at the future, I mean, the fascinating things with prevention are things that when you do a good job of prevention, you don't know what you prevented necessarily. It's not measurable. On the other hand, sometimes we also have a dark history of all the outcomes of not doing good prevention. If we could go back to the early days of opioid use, what kind of things would we do differently? What would you do if you were a scientist and you could go back 20 years and you were going into a community telling them something? What would you tell them about opioids?
Well, I guess one of the big things was, that I understand, how the pharmaceutical companies were involved in kind of getting a message out about these drugs being less addictive than they ended up being. And so I guess as a scientist, I would, have wanted to really have the evidence that that was the case before, they were out there kind of promoting that idea. So having that, actually having that evidence to back that claim up.
Because we sort of learned that that's the case. It doesn't really work for pain. It does a lot of things that are really dangerous as well. But in many rural communities, it's almost as if we are 20 years back, because not many people know these things now that much of the world is learning the hard way. Can we really change a trend at a community level? Is that the best way to change outcomes when it comes to things like substance abuse?
I think that it requires efforts at very, at different levels and from different partners, coming from the federal level, the state level, and then city and county community level. So, really it takes efforts on a lot of parts. Prevention is part of it, treatment is part of it, the pharmacies and the doctors are part of it, so the healthcare industry. So I feel like, all in policies, and laws, all of those things have to be working together to really address this problem. And I think we're onto this now, but it's in a way it's a little too late, of course, for the people that have lost loved ones through this issue. But at least now we seem to be on the right track.
From the hundreds of people I've talked to that have lost children and had very tragic experiences with addiction and overdoses, almost all of them point back to times around middle school where things turned south. Is this a very firm commitment by your programs to really target kids in that age group?
We do. I mean, we do feel like, as I'm a developmental psychologist, that's my training, and my interest area is adolescence, and for that main reason, because that is the time when it's such an important time in their development, and we really want to just give them the skills and the strengths that they need to make good decisions and to become the best that they can.
Thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for joining us. And keep your eye on Mediacom MC22 for our next episode, where we explore Iowa stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Only on Surviving Bad on Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.
If you or someone you care about are looking for help with treatment or recovery, there is help out there. Please visit these sites.